This episode of To The Journey is brought to you by Audible.com, offering more than 180,000 titles for smartphone, tablet and desktop. To get a free audiobook of your choice and help Trek FM at the same time, visit audibletrial.com/trekfm. And also by Enterprise in Space, an international programme of the non-profit National Space Society. Find out how you can help science and education and become a virtual crew member aboard the NSS Enterprise Orbiter by visiting enterpriseinspace.org. And if you want to join in the conversation and share your thoughts on this episode, join the Babel Conference, our listeners group on Facebook. Just type Babel, that's B-A-B-E-L, into the Facebook search field. We look forward to seeing you there.
This is Tim Russ, Lieutenant Commander Tuvok on Star Trek Voyager, and you're listening to Trek FM.
I think it's safe to say that no one on this crew has been more obsessed with getting home than I have. But when I think about everything we've been through together, maybe it's not the destination that matters. Maybe it's the journey. And if that journey takes a little longer, so we can do something we all believe in, I can't think of any place I'd rather be, or any people I'd rather be with.
To the journey.
You're here.
To the journey.
Hi everyone at home and welcome. This is To The Journey. I'm your co-host, Kay Shaw, and with me, as they always are...
Suzanne Williamson and...
Zachary Fruhling.
Guys, it is so nice to be back recording. I have really missed you.
It feels like it's been ages.
It has been
Kay,
ages.
you had a family emergency. Suzanne, you were taken out by the crud. I had a sinus infection while that was going down. I just let you guys take the fall for it. No one really knew about it.
It's like we were on summer hiatus.
Yeah, it was, although slightly less fun. It would have been so much more fun if we'd all jetted off to a desert island like we suggest we had in our last full episode. We did the desert island one in our last full episode, didn't we? Our last proper episode.
A while ago now.
Yeah. Yeah, that feels like a really long time ago.
It was kind of like Voyager's first year in the Delta Quadrant. We were under constant siege there for a while.
Yeah. It felt like that, definitely. It certainly felt like something was working against us. But we're here.
We're here. You can't keep a good podcast team down.
No. And we're ready to talk tonight some Joe Carey.
Lieutenant Joe Carey.
Lieutenant Joe Carey, yes. So, first thoughts on Joe Carey then, everyone.
What can you say about Joe Carey?
He has an action figure.
That's pretty good. If you've only been in like 6 episodes and you still get an action figure, you're doing something right.
Yeah, you did something really right. Because it seems like he was in more episodes than just the 6.
Yes, yeah, that's what I was going to say. He does feel like he's in more than just 6 episodes. He feels like he's kind of a constant background presence. And I know he doesn't have a lot to say and he doesn't feature very heavily in a lot of the episodes, but he kind of just weirdly feels like he's always there.
Yeah.
But I guess he isn't.
No, he's really not there very much. I was really surprised. And this isn't the power of headcanon, though, right? I mean, we just picture him being there all the time, even though he's not there most of the time.
Or the power of the actor. Josh Clark really made that character.
Where was Joe Carey while all this stuff was going down on Voyager? What was he doing?
Well, he's there in engineering. You just don't see
Somebody's
him.
got to run engineering when, B'Elanna's up in the ready room and all that.
He's hiding from B'Elanna behind a bulkhead?
Nah, he's not hiding from B'Elanna after the first sort of half a season. They start to see eye to eye after that, I think.
After she breaks his nose.
Yeah, well, that's the first time we see him, isn't it, in Parallax? I think that's the first time he shows up.
Yeah, he's not in the pilot, right?
I thought he was in Caretaker.
Well, I don't know whether he actually
I
sort of
could
is
be wrong.
named, but maybe he is there, yeah. Do we
I might have
see
made it
him?
up in my
maybe.
head.
When Janeway goes down to engineering to, like, when she's, like, messing with the magnetic constrictors and stuff and trying to stop the warp core breach.
The question is Joe Carey there?
I'm assuming he must be there at that point.
I could have sworn he was in Caretaker. I could have sworn, but I could really be wrong.
Okay. But I don't know whether we hear, like, his name or anything, do we? Do we know, like, exactly what his sort of job title is at the beginning? Like, what his role is? Like, I know he's lieutenant, but obviously he's not chief engineer, because we hear that the chief engineer...
And the chief died.
Dies in the pilot, yeah.
He might have just
like
been...
assistant?
Yeah, the underling.
Yeah, is it like an assistant chief engineer, or... Is that a thing?
I don't know. Is that a thing?
No, I don't know either.
What do they do down there in engineering anyway?
They hang out.
Push the buttons, turn the knobs, clean the plasma manifolds.
Yeah.
They polish the warp
Keep the
drive.
ship flying.
Make sure it's shiny.
A little spit and polish.
Polish the warp drive. Okay. So he is, well, fairly senior, I assume. If he's kind of like the next in line, which he is until... obviously B'Elanna shows up.
See, I think the thing we forget is that Voyager's not a very big ship. There's only 120 some odd people on there, right? So it's not like a Galaxy class starship where you got 1,000 people to choose, and by extension, like a large subset of engineering people, like 200 engineering people to choose from. We've got only like 3 or 4, or maybe more than that, maybe 10.
Well, yeah, but I mean, we see like 3 or 4, don't we, main ones? Because obviously they had this chief engineer we never see that dies. Mm-hmm. And then, is Seska, like, in engineering at the beginning, even though she has her mystical
She is in
job role?
engineering.
She gets assigned there to start with, doesn't she? Mm-hmm. And then she seems to have some kind of mystical, exciting, changing job role where she changes uniforms.
She's a jack of all trades.
Yeah. And then we've got Vorik, of course, as well, haven't we?
Unfortunately, yes.
Unfortunately. Can't you picture, what if Vorik had been made chief engineer?
Ugh, no.
Yeah, that would have been interesting.
Like what if B'Elanna was too
B'Elanna
insubordinate and Joe
working for
Carey, let's say Joe Carey got killed or something like that.
Don't say that because he did.
Well, later.
Yeah, we'll get on to that later on, yeah.
Okay, so the fundamental question with Joe Carey, we just need to get it out there. The fundamental question is, should he have been the one to get the promotion to chief engineer over B'Elanna? Should Starfleet promote from within, or is it 100% acceptable to take an outsider and promote the outsider?
I think you needed to promote B'Elanna just for that meshing of the two crews. I mean, sure, you made Chakotay first officer, but you need more Maquis in places of power.
Yeah, I think that's one reason, and I think also because they make the point that she's a better engineer. Mm-hmm. And I think if this was like a situation normal, then obviously it would be Carey. But I think because of the situation that they're in, they need all their best people in their best positions.
Yep.
Even if that's not how you'd normally do
Poor
it.
Joe Carey is like, they're in the middle of a crisis, and he's like, I've got an idea, and he's, here's my idea, and everyone goes, that's a pretty terrible idea.
Nah.
Bad idea, Joe. He's like, man.
And then B'Elanna and Janeway are like, yeah, so now we're going to do that thing that men have been doing to women for generations. And we're just going to talk over you and tell you what's going to happen. Yeah.
Womansplaining.
We're going to womansplain.
I can picture Joe Carey kind of like sulking off, like he is like puts his head down and kind of what's the word?
Nobody
like,
understands me.
He like slinks outside. Nobody understands me. Nobody likes my ideas.
I'm gonna go work on my model Voyager in my quarters.
I think he had a little sulk for a while, didn't he? But then he gets all grown up about it, and he's like, yeah, I'm absolutely going to work under you and everything else. So
yeah, he made the best of a bad situation for him.
Especially when, B'Elanna has effectively dented his face.
Yes. His nose was never the same.
There's no room for promotion on Voyager, right? So his career is essentially dead, stagnant.
Just ask Carey.
Just ask Carey.
Yeah, at least he started off as a lieutenant.
Can't you picture what if they had made Harry and Joe Carey bromances
Harry Carey
instead of Harry Carey? Yes. Yeah, can't you picture like they pass each other in the hall and he's like, "Hey, Ensign Kim." He's like, "Hey, Lieutenant Carey." Like, here we are, still lieutenant and still ensign after all these years.
See, I could kind of see that working because when Carey first shows up, like, I don't know whether you guys noticed this as well, but he kind of reminds me of O'Brien a bit. Just because I think it's like part the engineer thing and part the hair. Because he's got the whole curly O'Brien hair going on.
They have a similar nose, too.
Yeah, I think there's a similarity there. So he reminds me of O'Brien.
A good Irish nose.
Which means that, that would totally work for the bromance, because, of course, we have the whole O'Brien-Bashir bromance going on Deep Space Nine.
Yeah.
That's like the new hashtag Harry Carey.
I need to find some fan fiction with them in it now.
The bromance that could have been.
Yeah.
Yep. Missed opportunities.
Yeah, I can kind of picture it like, rather than Captain Proton becoming the thing, it could have been like jazz music in the holodeck. Like, Harry's like, I'll bring my clarinet, you can bring your, what's another
saxophone?
Jazz instrument, I don't know. Yeah, okay, there you go. So rather than Captain Proton, I can kind of picture, like, what if they had done jazz music in the holodeck? Like, Harry'd be like, come on, let's go to the holodeck. I'll bring my clarinet, you can bring your saxophone.
Yeah, and they had some kind of jazz bar program.
Called Harry Carey. Yep. Instead of Sandrines.
And they have a holographic Riker with his trombone.
No, it's just fun to it's fun to imagine a different way that Voyager could have unfolded. Like, if Joe Carey's there all the time, he's got to be friends with some people. He's got to have some hobbies. But we don't ever really learn much of consequence about Joe Carey.
No, the only hobby we ever found out about was him building the little model Voyager in a bottle.
And he wants to have lunch with 7 of 9. We learned that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
In the alternate timeline, but
yeah, we're skipping ahead a little bit now, but not that we agreed to do this in chronological order.
No, there doesn't need to be order to any of this.
So, do you think Joe Carey was resentful, or did he really just accept his place as subordinate to B'Elanna, and he just bit the bullet? Like, okay, I'm not going to be chief engineer. I got to be okay with it. I'm going to work hard. I'm going to be the best kind of subordinate
totally
officer I can be,
it.
but I'm not going to be the guy in charge.
Totally accepted it.
He seems to have. Yeah.
I think, though, that's because he's not really interested in his own personal career at that point. I think he's so interested in getting home, because as we know, he's got his family back home. I think he's so focused on that he is happy with whatever is the thing that's going to make that happen.
Yeah.
So I think if he thinks that B'Elanna's a better engineer, which I think we see him accept that is the case. If he thinks that's the case, then he's going to be happy to let her do that, if that means that they're going to get home faster, or they're going to have a greater potential of getting home.
She makes Joe Carey look like a packlet.
Engineering packlet.
By comparison. She makes the ship go.
He is a very decent guy in that way. And although we don't actually see him interact with his family, and obviously because we don't hear him talk an awful lot, and we don't see him on screen an awful lot, we don't hear about them, or his relationship with them. I don't know. I get really strong impression that he's a very family-oriented guy.
Yeah, I could see that.
I guess that's why he reminds me of O'Brien as well, in a way, because O'Brien's quite a family-oriented guy as well. So,
well, Carey also served on the Enterprise.
Well,
just like
potentially,
O'Brien.
Yeah, that is true.
Wait. O'Brien is a family guy only until Keiko comes home from her being away for a year. Then he's like, okay, I need my time on the holodeck with Julian.
Well, yeah, he does, but
wouldn't you need a break on the holodeck too?
Yeah, come on.
It's like, I feel smothered with all this relationship closeness. I gotta get back to the holodeck.
I mean, he does tell Julian that he likes him better than his wife at some point, doesn't he? I can't remember exactly what he says, but he says something like that, doesn't he? Does he not say, I wish you were my wife? I can't remember exactly what he says, but he says something about liking Julian better than his wife at some point.
Well, I like Julian better than his wife, too.
Yeah, I don't hate Keiko that much, but...
I don't hate her, but Julian. Hands down.
Julian's ace, yeah. But yes, you're right, Suzanne, we do get... It's not actually named as Carey, but,
Oh, come on, it's totally him.
It could quite easily be, yeah, because, he's in there, same actor in TNG.
Yeah, why not? I think it's more fun to imagine that it's really him, right?
So. I'm all
for
headcanon in that way, and continuity.
And just like Vorik's brother is on the Enterprise.
Yes, whatever his...
I can't remember, but I swear it's his twin brother.
It's something like Tarek or Torak or something very similar to Vorik, but not exactly the same.
It's like
I think it begins with a T, yeah, but and something similar to Vorik, but yeah.
So do you think they were trying to consciously go for that O'Brien feel when they casted Joe Carey?
I don't know whether it was conscious, but...
That good old-fashioned O'Brien vibe.
There's certainly a similar feel to the character, I think. Whether it was conscious, I don't really know. I mean, I guess O'Brien's been in Deep Space Nine for a while at this point, so...
Yeah.
Because he was very much a secondary character in TNG.
Yeah, he just operated the transporter.
Pretty much.
Yeah, this is fun.
So I guess the next time that we see Carey after we've had the initial B'Elanna getting the job, nose-breaking incident, a little bit in an episode fairly soon after that where we sort of see him working in B'Elanna's team and stuff and starting to settle down into the role. The next time that we see him is this instant in Prime Factors where we get the
Creepy
the
dude.
whole kind of mutiny type thing going on, don't we? Did it surprise you guys that he kind of went in on that?
Well,
No.
we're still pretty early in
'cause he
Voyager's
wants
run.
to get
We
home.
haven't seen,
Yeah.
and we haven't seen him all that much, so we don't really know if he's an upright guy or if he's a little more like, is he more of a rebel or is he more of a straight-laced kind of guy? We don't really know, right?
No, we don't. But I think, like I was saying before, I had already really got the impression that he was a very kind of upright guy by that point, because it always still surprises me that he goes in on that. I just don't know. He doesn't strike me as the kind of person that would do that. He's a toe the line kind of guy.
I was more surprised by Tuvok than I was by Carey.
Yeah, although I think when Tuvok explains it logically, you understand why he's...
Yeah. Well, we know
he does
Tuvok
it.
can rationalize anything, and it's understandable that B'Elanna, a recent Maquis convert, for lack of a better word, would go in on a
none of
scheme
the
like this.
Maquis
Seska makes total
surprise
sense,
me.
but Joe Carey's the one who's got a lot to lose. He's like he's a Starfleet officer, right?
But he wants to get home.
Yeah. Yeah, he does. But I kind of feel like it goes against what happened earlier on, which is that he trusts Janeway as his captain to make the right decision about choosing B'Elanna for the job. Therefore, to me, that kind of comes across... He respects Janeway's ability to decide what's the best way for them to accomplish what they want to accomplish, which is getting home. So it kind of surprises me that he goes against her in that way.
But you could say the same about Harry.
Yeah.
And Harry's all for getting the technology, too.
I guess I totally understand Joe Carey's position on this. Yeah, as much as he wants to be in Starfleet, he wants to be at home more. And if they court-martial him when he gets back home, at least he's home and he can live with that.
Yeah.
Instead of being 75 years away from everything and everyone he knows.
He's like, great, now I can start that jazz band I always wanted to start now that I'm not in Starfleet anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it does make sense. I'm not saying it doesn't make sense. I'm just saying it surprises me, and I kind of wanted to analyse why it surprises me. I kind of wanted to dig into why it surprises me, and I think it's because I'd already got this impression that he was a toe-the-line kind of guy.
Well, in Star Trek in general, especially in 1990s Star Trek, the Starfleet officers are like these idealized humans, right? They don't have flaws, they don't have conflicts, so we're just not used to seeing a Starfleet officer who's willing to throw caution to the wind and go against the grain.
That is a very good point, actually. Yeah.
At that point in Star Trek, then we had Enterprise, and now we're having Discovery, and the tone has changed a little bit. But in 1990s land, the Starfleet officers were very perfect beings.
Yeah, I guess it is surprising for us to see that from an officer. So yeah, that is probably why, really, because he's Starfleet and you just don't expect it.
Yeah, and it's circa 1995, right? So
Yeah, because it's right at the beginning of the show, because we're still in season 1 at this point.
But you can see the tone starting to change, because it is in Voyager where we start to get these little character developments and infighting and subtlety and being willing to break the rules for the sake of getting home. And Voyager was starting to... It didn't get as dark as Deep Space Nine. Didn't get as dark as Enterprise could get. Didn't get as dark as the tone from what we've seen in the Discovery trailers.
Yeah.
But it was headed that direction a little bit, and the culture was heading that
Definitely,
Yeah.
because we ended up with a captain that was dealing with depression,
Yeah.
which you
Yeah.
never would have seen from Picard, ever.
No, I guess we kind of get it a little bit with Cisco, with his wife's death and stuff.
Understandably.
Not in the same way, but I mean, we get a little bit of that flawed idea, so...
We get to see Cisco going a little bit crazy in Deep Space Nine towards the end there, too. And he's having
this is before
visions
that,
at the beginning
though,
of
isn't
season
it?
7.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because this is early Voyager, so it's mid Deep Space Nine. Yeah, I mean, it's been said over and over again, really, how more Starfleet marquee tension would have been nice in season 1, and we sort of know that was what the writers wanted to do, and it wasn't what the network wanted. They wanted it to be more like TNG, so that didn't happen. So we probably don't want to talk about that too much, but I think it's interesting that we are seeing it in there a little bit at this stage.
But the way we're describing it, though, is not so much Maquis Starfleet tension. It sounds like we want to see more of Starfleet sympathizing with the Maquis.
Yeah.
Breaking the rules for the sake of getting
Well,
home.
because it's such a unique situation. Just like, well, they have their Starfleet rules and everything else, but what does it take for them to break out of that? You know, is this a situation where they'll step aside from that because actually there's something else that's more important? I think it's why, in a lot of ways, Janeway clings to the Starfleet side of things so strongly, because she wants to maintain her identity, I think. And it makes her feel, I think, in some ways, like she's not entirely on her own, because she's like, no, I'm still part of this thing, even though I can't actually contact them.
I'm still part of it.
They were trying to do this with Tom Paris, right? Tom Paris was supposed to be like the Starfleet bad boy in a way, and that lasted like a week before they pacified him. So Joe Carey could have been the Starfleet bad boy.
No.
What a missed opportunity.
Bad boy.
But he was in that episode.
Not
He could have
totally.
been that,
Scheming and plotting and breaking the rules. And
Because would you call Harry Kim a bad boy? Because he was doing the same stuff.
not
Exactly.
in your wildest dreams.
No.
Oh, Harry. But that could have been the kind of character that he had the potential to be. I think it's interesting that we see dimensions to that. That sometimes he toes the line and sometimes he doesn't.
Well, that makes him human.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, like you're saying, it's a departure from this kind of perfect Starfleet officer cardboard cutout that we've seen before, where people don't really have that dimension to them.
It breaks the trope of a typical Starfleet officer from that time period.
Yeah, that people have motivations that are outside of just wanting to do their job, basically.
So it sounds like you guys aren't too keen on Joe Carey, the bad boy, though.
No Joe Carey, the bad boy. He's too much of a nice guy.
Yeah, he is. Oh, I bet he'd be a great dad. I bet his boys missed him a lot.
You don't think that when Voyager was still back in dry dock in the alternate timeline that he had ulterior motives in asking Seven of Nine out
No
to lunch?
way. No.
I think maybe he's more of a bad boy than he gets credit for.
I don't really know what to make of that little incident. What do you
That's
guys
what I make
think
of it.
about that? That's what you think of it. So what do you think about that, Suzanne?
I do, absolutely.
No, I don't think he had an ulterior motive. No. I just beefed you. Yes, I did. And I'll do it again.
I'm always surprised, again, by that scene. I guess he's a character that surprises me quite a lot. Because there's not a lot of time for him to be established, and yet he then kind of breaks the mold of the tiny bit of time he's had to be molded in.
Well, you know, he kind of swaggers over to 7-9. He's like, I'm going to be chief engineer someday. You just wait and see. So I got my confidence up. I'm going to ask 7 of 9 out to lunch. He doesn't know what 7 of 9 is, but I'm going to ask this blonde ensign out to lunch. And she's going to look at me and see chief engineer
And
Joe
then his
Carey.
wife is going to find out and beat him up.
He'll be in the doghouse.
Beat him up just for lunch.
She'll punt him all the way to the Delta
the
Quadrant.
imitation that Zachary has the lunch, and I'm doing air quotes here, lunch.
Yeah, air
Yes.
quotes lunch. But are we talking about air quotes lunch,
lunch.
or are we just talking about regular lunch?
With the way Zach's saying it, it's definitely air quotes lunch. With the way I'm thinking, no, there are no air quotes involved. It's just lunch. He just wants to talk to somebody.
Yeah. I don't interpret it particularly kind of sleazy or like he's trying to pick her up or anything.
No, I don't think it's like sleazy. I think maybe he's fishing a little bit.
Get out of the gutter, Zach. Out of the gutter.
Maybe he's a look but don't touch kind of guy. Maybe he's a
Sometimes
window
a lunch
shopping.
is just a lunch. Okay.
Oh, man.
Window shopping.
Bit of window shopping. Yeah, I don't really know.
Transparent aluminum shopping. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I really don't know. I really don't know what he's actually... Is he just trying to make friends or...
Yes.
That's it. On the surface, he's like, we're new on the ship. I haven't seen you around here. What's your name? Maybe we can be friends.
Yeah, like, if he'd asked a guy for lunch or whatever,
Maybe he did earlier.
yeah, maybe we wouldn't have interpreted
Harry
it
turned
that
him
way.
down.
So maybe it's a bit of a, because she's a woman and because she's obviously attractive, that we're interpreting it a certain way. So I don't know.
I didn't take it that way.
No, the soon-to-be deceased first officer already turned him down for lunch.
Commander Cabot.
Ugh. He was not a nice man.
He didn't seem to be. Also, he died due to being an idiot. Well, he did. Because Janeway's like telling everyone to hold on to something, and then he just like runs across the bridge, and it's like, what are you doing?
Disobeying the captain's orders. Bam. Dead.
Yeah, that's what the Delta Quadrant's going to do to you. So we have this whole apple thing that goes on as well, don't we?
Yes, the introduction of Leola root.
Yes.
Yeah, what is with this apple scene?
I don't know.
So do we
I
blame
don't know
Joe
either.
Carey
It's so
for
random.
the Leola root?
Well, maybe.
I think we do.
You're saying if Joe Carey was a better fruit picker, then we wouldn't have needed to delve into the bottomless pit that is Neelix's Leola
Yes.
root stash.
Yeah.
And did anyone actually scan that apple?
You're just going to take a bite.
Well, no, you're just taking Neelix's word for it that it's poisonous. Maybe he just wanted to, shove Leola root down everybody's throat instead of those delicious apples.
Maybe. But then there's a few things here. First of all, this kind of reminds me of a few incidents with red shirts in the original series.
It does.
Where they just eat random stuff and drop dead.
Oh, this looks tasty.
Have you seen Snow White, dude? Don't eat the apples.
Yeah. And it's like, surely one of the first things that they teach you in Starfleet Academy is don't eat random stuff that you don't know what it is
Scan it
before
first.
you've checked if it's poisonous. Yeah.
Don't eat the local flora.
So that's kind of a bit of a hark back in that way to some not entirely brilliant writing. But it kind of then also makes me think, well, that reminds me of something else from the original series, which is sometimes some of the characters in the original series can be a bit malleable in the sense that they end up being whatever you need them to be for that episode. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like, would that be what we'd expect Joe Carey to do by this point? No, not really.
No, not at all.
It's almost like he's a Chekhov type figure. Can't you picture in the original series Chekhov bebopping around on some planet? He's like, "Oh look, mushrooms!"
Yeah.
He's like, "Look, Captain, I found these mushrooms to eat. Don't eat the mushrooms, Chekhov. Don't eat the mushrooms."
That's kind of what I mean. And it's like, certainly early on in the first season when we see a reasonable amount of him compared to how much we see later on, he's kind of the guy that we have there to fill the role that we need this week. Mm-hmm. And it's like this week we need him to be the moron that's eating some poisonous apples.
Instead of the guy that was almost running engineering.
Yeah. So it's like, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, like, it's a funny little scene, and I kind of like the whole thing with Neelix and the Leola root and everything else.
No, we're not making fun of these scenes. These are great scenes.
Yeah.
We're kind of, we're air poking fun at it.
Yeah, I'm just kind of wondering whether or not this is really what he would do as a, he's a lieutenant. He's a seasoned Starfleet officer by
Yeah.
this point. He's been around the block a few times.
And he's an engineer. Why in the heck do they have him picking fruit versus like inventing some device to get them off the damn planet?
Well, I get that, but I got the impression that a lot of them were down there, so I think everybody was kind of out fruit picking and stuff, so I'm okay with that part of it.
But did nobody bring a tricorder?
Everyone was fruit picking.
Well, you do wonder, don't you?
They're like, well, while we're here, let's all go for a little stroll and pick some fruit.
Well, they were having a bit of a fruit picking session, weren't they?
I'm seriously questioning whether Neelix, pulled the wool over everybody's eyes with that one.
Just trying to sneak some Leola root in there.
Yeah, trying to get the Leola root. So we think Neelix might have been familiar with this planet, and actually he's like, yes, get this in here.
And if you remember, in that episode, he's also accused of giving technology to the Kazon. That very
Yes.
same-
That's true.
What's the connection there?
He's smart enough to give technology to the Kazon, but not smart enough to use the tricorder to scan an apple.
Is it symbolism like the poisoned apple? It's like, a symbol for his moral corruption and giving technology to the Kazon.
You went
Wow,
that
you're
deep.
way over analysing that.
You went deep on that one.
I feel like I'm reaching there, maybe.
A little bit. But I think the apple thing is probably just a bit of a thing to get him to be in the place where they can then accuse him of having been giving technology to the Kazon. So
First of all, he tries to poison everyone with the apples, and then he's giving away technology to the Kazon, right?
Well, wasn't it?
It's the other way
I don't
around,
remember
guess,
because
right?
it's a little while since I've seen this episode, but wasn't it something like because he'd gone to get the apples or something, he was in the cave where something
he
had
was
gone down,
he was
and
over
was
that
why they thought
ridge.
he'd done it. Yeah. So it was their way of putting him in the right place at the right time to be able to accuse him of having done it.
Well, it was a way for Seska to frame him.
Yeah. I kind of like that because I thought that it was a nice way of involving someone who we'd already seen a bit of. And there was a nice little bit of a play there of the sense of...
Well, again, they were making him out to be the bad boy.
Yeah.
We don't really know. We know it wasn't him after the fact now, but in the moment, back then, when this first aired, we'd seen him trading Federation literature for the spatial trajector, breaking the rules, and now he's being accused of giving technology to Kazon. Right? They are making him out to be a morally questionable, potentially corrupt
Well, there
conspirator.
you go then. Maybe that's why we get this slight conflict, because there's a conflict between the character that he actually is and then the way that he's been sort of almost set up a little bit to
You're right.
be
We
a
have
foil.
retconned him to be lovable Joe Carey, who's more like O'Brien, but really they're trying to make him out to be questionable. I think, back then. And now we know better, but back then we didn't.
Yeah.
Because we were all so innocent back then, and the wool was being pulled over our eyes as well.
But I didn't believe it for a minute back then. I
You didn't think maybe Joe Carey was the one that gave the technology?
Because the
to
first
Kazon?
time he was trying to trade technology was with someone that wasn't an enemy. The Kazon, definite enemy. He wouldn't have crossed that line.
But he's already willing to cross the line a little bit. Maybe he's just taking that next
Not
step.
with the enemy, Zach.
But I guess we know, as you're saying, we know that with hindsight, but I don't really remember what I thought when I first saw it, so maybe.
Yeah, it's too long ago now. Too long ago.
Maybe not. I do like it, though. I like the fact that we get these sort of few different minor characters that get into that little interplay with the who's working with the Kazon, who's feeding the information, who's doing this. I like that it's not just like, oh, this person we've made up for this week. It's like people that they've introduced a little bit. I like that.
But look at the alternate reading of these scenes we've already discussed, right? So he has his nose broken by B'Elanna. He's like vying for power to become the chief engineer on this starship, and B'Elanna belts him one. That's one reading of that. Then he's like, B'Elanna, I'm really trying to work hard to be part of your team. He's like, he knows I'm not very good at this, but I'm really trying. Yeah, like kind of snide, like I'm really trying to be part of your team, B'Elanna. And then they catch him with this little mini conspiracy with the spatial trajector. He's casting his lot in with Seska and a former Maquis like B'Elanna. He's a bad boy. He's breaking the rules, taking that first step. And then they suspect that he's trading technology with the Kazon. Right? These are not great things. They're making him out to be not a great character, like one scene after another.
But then they do the same thing with Tom.
They do.
Which I didn't believe then either.
But Tom's got those baby blue eyes and
and receding hairline, yeah.
And receding hairline.
Oh, poor Robbie. So I guess after that point, once we've realised that it's not Carey, or they've shown us that it's not Carey and it's all, this Michael Jonas character instead, and obviously Seska as well, we don't see him for a little while. He kind of disappears.
Well, that's my point. I guess when have we all decided that Joe Carey is a good guy? Because none of these scenes really drive home the point that he's lovable Joe Carey.
That was just my impression of him from the beginning. And it always stuck. He was never a bad guy to me. You just couldn't convince me.
You're saying you looked at Joe Carey and you said, that guy is a teddy bear.
Yes,
right there.
I mean, look at him. He's just, you want to pinch his cheeks.
I don't know. I honestly don't know what it was that gave me that impression, but
that's my point. I guess there's not a whole lot you can really point to that makes him out to be the lovable guy we want him to be.
He just is.
Well, we do learn that it wasn't really him who was trading technology with the Kazon, so he's sympathetic because he's falsely accused there. He's kind of a nice guy because he asked Tuvok if Tuvok is all right in Fury. Remember, it's a little tiny little scene, but Joe Carey's in that. So okay, so he's kind of compassionate. Then he's asking 7 of 9 out to lunch, so we don't know what to make of that. And then he dies. That's Joe Carey.
yeah.
I was
that's
so
kind of-
mad when they
that's
killed
kind of
him.
it.
So mad.
It's kind of nice to get a good death scene considering how little he was on Voyager. He gets a pretty good like,
Yeah, he does
send-off.
get a bit more screen time in that episode, though.
Yeah.
Because obviously he's on the party that ends up down on this planet with the caves and what have you, where the population is sheltering from nuclear winter or whatever it is.
Am I just not giving Joe Carey enough credit? Because I am really struggling to find something where we can point to him and go, that guy is a spectacular Starfleet officer.
I mean, when do we actually learn about like his family and stuff? Because I know at the beginning of Friendship 1, he like talks about his sons, doesn't he? Mm-hmm. I think it's at the beginning when they're down on the planet. He's talking to, is it Tom? I don't know. Anyway, he's talking to someone and he talks about his boys and stuff. So I don't know whether that's the first time that we find out about his family.
And that's always sweet. I mean, no, he's talking about his family.
Yeah, and whether
absolutely.
then,
It's like, oh, okay,
because
poor
we
guy.
find out about that later, then on rewatching it, we've already got that impression. It's interesting because it's hard to go back now and think what you thought the first time you watched it. I don't really remember.
So now we want to give this like alt reading of Joe
Because
Carey.
we
when I'm
know
like,
a bit more about him later on. Mm-hmm. And obviously I think the fact that he dies and we know that he has kids that he's not going to get back to, that automatically makes him more sympathetic as a character. Like you automatically you feel for him more because of that.
And why didn't Admiral Janeway go back to that point? Seriously.
You've said this before, Suzanne, and I'm totally with you on this one. Like, why could she not have gone back like a week or two earlier and saved Joe Carey?
Exactly. It's like, really, you're going to save Seven, you're going to save Tuvok. What about Joe? He was with you from the
what about
beginning.
Joe?
maybe that's why the Doctor chose the name Joe in honor of the fallen.
Oh, that's
Joe
a nice
Carey.
idea, actually. I never thought about that.
I didn't either. I just thought of it
But
right
still,
now.
go back and save
I
Joe.
like it. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Like, it took you all those years to think of Joe. Like, actually, I thought of it right after Lieutenant Carey was killed in that tragic incident in Friendship 1.
Especially because I kind of feel like with the scene that we get at the end of this episode with the little model Voyager and Janeway and Chakotay at the end where she's talking about like how bad she feels about what's happened to him and stuff, and
Yeah.
she's got the little model and everything. I just feel like that's kind of feels almost like it's the seed that's planted what happens later with Admiral Janeway. That is the start of this kind of process that then gets her thinking, I need to go back and fix this. So the fact that she wouldn't go back to then kind of feels a bit disingenuous in a way.
It also makes it sound like it took 7 years for us to convince ourselves that Joe Carey was a good guy.
I always thought he was a good guy.
Like, that's not right. There's
always
something wrong with
thought
that.
Maybe it's just because he took B'Elanna's... I was going to say took B'Elanna's punch on the
Abuse?
chin, but he took it on the nose, actually.
On the
But you know
nose.
what I mean. And the fact that he's kind of so gracious about stepping aside as well.
He is very gracious. I mean, he continues to work there alongside of her, and he does try to do a good job. He's not the greatest engineer. That's why he's not chief engineer, right? But he's a hardworking dude, and he knows some things, and he contributes, and that's good enough for him.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of gives me the impression that he's more sort of solid in the skills that he's got. And he's great at sort of working within the parameters of Starfleet rules and all of that type of thing when he's doing his engineering. But he's not a B'Elanna or a Geordie or a Scotty in the way that he will just like step completely outside of it when he knows that that's the right thing to do. He's not got that level of creative thinking with engineering where he knows when actually it's time to step outside of the guidelines that are set down.
Well, you hit on something. It's so much of being a spectacular engineer in Starfleet, a chief engineer, is this outside the box thinking, right? Being able to, take the devices and the gadgets and reconfigure them and add a little duct tape and make it work, right? Like MacGyver. Joe Carey can't
Yeah,
MacGyver
the
it.
creative side of it, like the creative science almost, the creative
Well,
engineering.
he doesn't have
side
the
of things,
mullet,
yeah.
so he definitely can't MacGyver. You have to have the mullet to be able to MacGyver.
So, in my mind, the contrast between Lieutenant Carey and Lieutenant Ayala is stark because Lieutenant Ayala is there all the time and gets very little to say. And then Joe Carey's in like 6 episodes and gets all the speaking
Yeah.
parts.
And he gets an action
Absolutely.
figure. Whereas Ayala does
And
not
he
get
gets
an
an
action
action
figure,
figure.
and I'm very upset about that.
Yeah, even though he's there for like over 100 of the 183 episodes, isn't he? Or 182, however many episodes it is. I should know that, but I don't.
It's just so odd they wouldn't sort of balance it out a little more than that. You don't know what's going on with the actors' lives and what they're... I have no idea, but so there must be some reason for it. But
But yeah, I don't know. Why do we think they did kill him off? I don't really know what that was all about. Is it just for the scene at the end?
Probably. They needed to kill somebody, and they're like, oh yeah, what about that Joe Carey dude?
It could just be one of these things where, like, okay, the show's winding down. You've got these loose ends. You got these characters that haven't had much development. What do you do to give them their due? Give them a good death scene right there in the last season, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of a bit like... I know he gets mentioned in Year of Hell, and we know he also dies in that timeline.
Poor Joe Carey. He dies there, too.
Well, you know, everybody else dies at least twice, so...
Well, anyone who's anybody dies at least twice on Voyager.
Exactly, so...
And some die a whole lot more.
Extra death scene in there.
If you don't die at least twice on Voyager, you're part of the lower decks.
Aside from that mention, which is in, like, season 4, we don't hear about him, do we, until, like, going up towards the end. And these couple of mentions that we talked about in, like, Fury and Relativity, I almost get the impression that they're kind of reminding us who he is before they kill him.
Mm-hmm. It's like, oh...
Did you guys feel that as well?
Let's mention him again. Just plant that seed.
Yeah.
They should have had a good follow-up scene with them cleaning out his quarters, like Harry finds his saxophone. He's like, oh, we were going to start that band. We never did it.
Aww. I feel really sad now.
Yeah, and that's my new headcanon, that Harry and Joe Carey... Harry Carey had a band.
Carey.
Yeah.
I like it.
A jazz band. So a question I've got for you guys about Joe Carey, because you guys know more about this than I do. Does Joe Carey make much of an appearance in the Voyager novels or in fan fiction?
No.
Not really.
Well, he's dead, right? So they can't bring him back, but...
He doesn't feature in the post-series novels for obvious reasons, because he's dead.
Well, he's dead.
But I haven't read, actually myself, a whole lot of the sort of TNG-style Voyager novels, as it were, where you get these episodic books that are set during the series.
Yeah, the early Voyager novels.
Yeah, so I haven't read a whole lot of those, so I don't really know.
Neither.
But if anybody out there has read more of those, and you are aware of any that particularly feature Joe Carey, do let us know.
And if you were the author of Joe Carey fan fiction out there, be sure you send that.
Well, I have read some fan fiction that features Joe Carey, and they always seem to hook him up with Samantha Wildman, which I never quite understood.
Yeah! I've read a couple
Really?
where that's been mentioned, actually.
Yeah.
Which I find kind of interesting.
I don't see it, but okay.
A couple of characters we don't know much about. Okay, pair them up. I get it, but I don't really see them as a
idea.
couple. As a
It's not one that obviously jumps out at me. I do kind of see why people would do it if they want to pair everybody off, because that is something that people want to do sometimes. But yeah, I don't think he features heavily in Voyager fan fiction.
Not a whole lot.
That would make him Naomi's potential stepdad.
Yeah.
Kinda. But yeah, I'd be really interested to know if any of the other novels, which I will get around to reading eventually, but there are just so many Star Trek novels, it's not even funny.
I mean, even if we just learned one or two little interesting tidbits about Joe Carey's background in the novels, that would be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, that's quite often what a lot of the novels are great for, adding depth to some of the characters.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be really nice if there was a bit more in there, because we really do find out very little about him.
See, Joe Carey, he's a bad boy. He steals replicator rackets.
You're making him into Tom Paris.
I was going to say, is that why Tom never has any?
Right. No, I feel like I've been kind of mean to Joe Carey, but I do feel like early on they were making him out to be kind of morally ambiguous, and then it kind of went nowhere, and he was too lovable to really follow through with it. But I feel like those early scenes plausibly cast him in that light, and it's kind of fun to run with that idea and see, what would evil Joe Carey be like.
Yeah, I think they were doing that, but I don't think they dropped it for any specific reason other than because they kind of did the storyline that they needed that for, which was the who's the traitor, and they wanted him to be part of the who's the traitor storyline. So once they discounted him as that, there was no reason really to keep that up. That's
true. Once he's not the traitor, it's like, okay, well, we just killed our bad boy line of reasoning with him, so now what?
Yeah.
Now he's a good guy. He wasn't really the traitor, so that didn't work. Yeah. It's funny, they kind of it's like they undercut their entire character development they had running for him at that point.
I wish he'd been around some more. I think generally in Voyager it would have been nice, because of the nature of the fact that we had a very limited cast of secondary characters on the ship, if we'd gotten to know, like, a decent subset of the rest of the crew better as secondary characters. Because, like in Deep Space Nine, there's a whole cast of secondary characters that we get tons of airtime of and we get to know really deeply and really well. And it would have been nice if we'd had a similar secondary set of characters on Voyager as well. And it feels like Joe Carey would have been one of those if they'd done that. So I think that's my kind of closing thoughts on him. But for the time that we do get of him, which is very little, we do get a fairly reasonable impression of the guy.
Yeah, and I really mean this. I was being too mean to Joe Carey. He's clearly a nice guy. He's a good character. It seems like he was there a lot more than he really was. He wasn't in that many episodes, but he's a strong part of our headcanon, so that speaks a lot to the character and to the acting behind the character. So I've been a little mean to Joe Carey. I have to kind of apologize.
Good. Stop being mean.
Well, it's been a lot of fun talking about the Harry Carey band tonight. But that is not the only thing that we've been talking about here on the network. So here is a quick look at some of the other things you may have missed elsewhere on Trek FM.
Previously on Trek.fm, Saturday Morning Trek.
This episode is the only Star Trek that they used to only watch with me. Like, they had no interest in Star Trek except for this episode. If I said Star Trek, they'd say, Tribbles! Oh, let's watch that Tribbles where they get real big and sits in Kirk's chair. They saw the live action one. They didn't, I mean, they kind of liked it, but they always went to the animated one.
Standard Orbit.
I was really hoping that Quinto would have a tie-in to, when the Hobbit trilogy came out, a few years ago. I was like, oh, they might tie into that, and Quinto can have a remix of the Ballad of Bilbo Baggins. They didn't quite go there, did they? So
no, they did not. They did not. But, there are certain things that you can, I guess, mirror or remake. That is not something that should ever be remade.
The 602 Club.
As I mentioned previously, completely blind, and not having known this history about him wanting to do a Tolkien-like world, I didn't get that at all. I mean, that's just nope.
And introducing The Edge, a Star Trek Discovery podcast.
What have you done out there on the edge of Federation space?
Welcome to The Edge, Trek FM's brand new podcast where we dive into the final frontier of the newest Star Trek series, Star Trek Discovery, the first Star Trek series to be on air in 12 and a half years? Something like that.
And that's what else is happening on Trek.fm.
Check out all these shows and join the conversation about your favourite corner of the Star Trek universe and beyond. You will find us wherever you get your podcasts. If you're an Apple user, be sure to hit the subscribe button in Apple Podcasts on iPhone, iPad or Apple TV, or the desktop iTunes app to get the latest episodes as soon as they're published. And please leave us a star rating and a written review whilst you're there. If you're not an Apple user, we have also got you covered. You can find our shows on Google Play Music, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spreaker, SoundCloud, Windows Phone, in most third-party apps, and you can also stream and download the MP3 file from our website, and you can grab the RSS link.
We'd love to hear your thoughts on today's show, and there are many ways for you to do that. The best place to join in the larger conversation is the Babel Conference, our listeners group on Facebook. Just type Babel, B-A-B-E-L, into the search field on Facebook, and it should come right up. If you'd like to send us an email, you can use the form on our website at trek.fm/contact. Choose Message to a Trek.fm show and select To the Journey. That will come right to us. You can also find the network on Twitter at TrekFM and on Facebook at facebook.com/TrekFM. Kay, if someone would like to invite you to an air quotes lunch, where can they reach you?
Well, they can always find me in the Babel Conference. And if they want to look me up on Twitter, my handle is ChocoWeeble. Zach, when you're not selling technology to the Kazon, where can our listeners find you?
Well, you can find me elsewhere on Trek.fm as co-host of Metatreks, Trek FM show on Star Trek and philosophy, along with my co-host over there, Mike Morrison. You can find me in the Babel Conference if you'd like to talk about Voyager with me over there, and you can find me on Twitter. My handle is just my name, at Zachary Fruhling. That's Zachary, Z-A-C-H-A-R-Y, Fruhling, F-R-U-H-L-I-N-G. And Suzanne, when you're not doing lead vocals for the Harry Carey band, where can our listeners find you on the Trek FM network and around the interwebs?
You can find me popping into the Babel Conference occasionally, and also find me on Twitter. My handle is KJaneway8.
Well, if you'd like to help us keep all of our shows coming to each week, we'd love it if you'd become a patron of the network through Patreon. Visit patreon.com/trekfm. That's patreon.com/trekfm to get all the details. Perks include early access to episodes, exclusive content, producer credits, and many more, all available through our special patrons website, The Patron Zone. It requires a great deal of money to produce, host, and distribute these podcasts each month. We really appreciate any support you can give us, and we hope you'll join the team. Again, you'll find all the details at patreon.com/trekfm.
We'd like to take this moment to thank some people that keep To the Journey coming to you each and every week. First off, our founder and publisher of Trek.fm, C. Brian Jones. Our executive producers, Matthew Rushing and Kenneth Tripp. Aaron Harvey, our art director. Richard Marquez, our production manager, and Brandon Shea Matala, our Patreon manager. Then the extra special people we want to thank are our associate producers, Bruce Lish, Ju Kim, Richard Marquez, Patrick Carlin, and Norman Lau.
So join us next week when we will be equipping our ablative armour and heading an extra 2 weeks back into the past to save Joe Carey.
Yay!
But until then, this has been To the Journey.